Some men spend their whole lives trying to prove they belong at the table. I spent mine quietly building the table, then setting it on fire when the wrong man told my son he wasn't good enough to sit at it. Remember that, because everything that follows makes a lot more sense when you understand that about me. Welcome to Dad Raw Revenge. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and remember the people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment, hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you're going to love it here. It was a Tuesday morning in early October, Cincinnati, Ohio, the kind of crisp fall morning where the sky looks like God freshly painted it. Pale blue, sharp edges, leaves turning burnt orange along Riverside Drive. I was in my garage on the east side of Anderson Township, elbow deep in a '67 Mustang restoration I'd been nursing for 3 years, when my phone buzzed. Nolan. Why is he calling at 9:40 on a Tuesday? Boy's supposed to be at work. Almost. Nolan. What's up, son? Silence. Then, breathing. The kind of breathing a grown man does when he's trying real hard not to fall apart in front of his father. Dad. His voice cracked on just that one word and my whole chest tightened. I'm at Alms Park. Can you just come? I was already pulling off my work gloves. Don't move. I found him on a bench near the east overlook, the one that faces the river, where Nolan used to fish with me when he was 9 years old. Except this time he wasn't 9. He was 34, sitting with his shoulders caved in like something invisible was pressing down on them. And next to him, little Eli, 5 years old, pack on his lap, eyes wide and quiet. The way kids get when they know something is wrong but nobody's told them what yet. He had a juice box in one hand and his grandfather's old Cincinnati Reds cap on his head, the one I gave him last Christmas. 2 duffel bags sat at Nolan's feet. 2 bags. Oh Lord, I didn't say anything at first. I sat down on the other side of Eli, put my arm around my grandson, and looked out at the Ohio River for exactly 4 seconds. Then I looked at my son. Why aren't you at work? Nolan laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind that comes out when everything hurts so bad that laughing is the only thing left. I got fired, Dad. Fired, I repeated it flat. From Weston Flow Enterprises. Yeah. The job you've had for 6 years. Yeah. I nodded slowly. Okay, Cole. Stay level. And the bags? He rubbed the back of his neck. Wouldn't look at me directly. Benjamin came over last night. To the house. Said he'd been talking to people at the company. Turns out he knows the regional director. He paused. He's the one who made the call, Dad. He got me fired. The river kept moving. Leaves kept falling. Eli kept sipping his juice box like the world wasn't quietly combusting around him. Benjamin Wilson, I said. Your father-in-law. My former father-in-law. Nolan's jaw tightened. Amelia filed papers this morning. I turned to look at him fully then. All of this happened since last night? He told her to. His voice dropped low, almost a whisper. He called her after he left our house and told her that if she stayed married to me, he was cutting her off completely. Said our bloodline. He stopped, swallowed. Said our bloodline wasn't worthy of the Wilson name. Bloodline. I sat with that word for a moment. Just let it sit there between us like something that had been dropped and nobody wanted to pick up. Dad. Nolan finally looked at me. His eyes were red. I don't know what I did. I gave that family everything. 6 years. I coached Benjamin's nephew's little league team. I showed up to every Wilson family dinner. I fixed that man's back porch with my own hands. His voice broke again. And he just threw us out like we were nothing. Like Eli was nothing. Eli looked up at the sound of his name. Grandpa, he said seriously, holding up his juice box. It's grape. I looked at that little boy, his father's eyes, my father's nose, 5 years old and completely unbothered because he trusted that the adults around him had it handled. He's right to trust that, son. Grandpa's got it handled. I stood up. Slow, deliberate. The way I do when my mind is already 3 moves ahead and my body's just catching up. Grab the bags. Nolan blinked. What? The bags, Nolan. Grab them. I reached down and took Eli's hand. We're not doing this on a park bench. Dad, where are we? Get in. The car. He knew that voice. Every son knows that voice. The one that doesn't argue with. He grabbed both bags without another word. We drove east on Route 50, then merged onto I-275, Nolan kept looking at me sideways, waiting for me to explain, waiting for me to say something reassuring or emotional or fatherly. I turned on the radio instead. Johnny Cash. Appropriate. Dad. You're scaring me a little. Good. I checked my mirror. Means you're paying attention. Where are we going? Where are we going? 32 years I kept this quiet. 32 years of early mornings and late nights and handshake deals, and reinvested profits, and not one word to anybody. Not my neighbors, not my brother. Not even Nolan's mother, God rest her soul. Not the full picture anyway. 32 years of being the man in the modest house on the modest street, driving the modest car because I watched my own father get robbed blind the moment people knew what he had. I wasn't making that mistake. But Benjamin Wilson just made a different one. He looked at my son, my blood, and decided we were beneath him. He pulled strings to destroy Nolan's career. He broke up my son's family. He sent my grandson to a park bench with 2 duffel bags. On a Tuesday, in my city, we pulled off the highway onto Mosteller Road in Sharonville, past the shipping companies and the industrial parks, until I turned into a long private drive behind a facility that stretched nearly 4 city blocks. Nolan sat up straight. The sign above the main entrance was clean, steel lettering, understated, professional. Nova Group, Advanced Manufacturing Solutions. Dad. Nolan's voice had gone quiet in a completely different way now. What is this place? I parked, cut the engine, sat there for just a moment looking at what 32 years of silence had built. This, I said, is your inheritance. I opened the car door, and we've got a vendor meeting to reschedule. He had no idea what that meant yet, but Benjamin Wilson was about to find out. If you've been listening for a while and want stories like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you for real. There's a particular kind of silence that fills a room when people realize they've been underestimating someone their entire life. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it just settles, like dust after an earthquake. I've been living inside that silence my whole career. Benjamin Wilson was about to get introduced to it. Wednesday morning, 7:14 a.m. I was already at Nova Group before the first shift clocked in. That's a habit I built in my 30s and never broke. You want to know the health of a business, don't look at the books. Look at who shows up first and who leaves last. I'd been showing up first for 32 years. My office was on the 2nd floor. Corner room, glass panels overlooking the production floor below. Nothing fancy. A desk, 2 chairs, a whiteboard covered in numbers that would have made Benjamin Wilson's eyes water. I kept a framed photo on the corner of the desk. Nolan at 12, holding a fish we caught at Winton Woods, grinning like he'd just conquered something. I looked at that photo every single morning. Today it hit different. My operations manager, Russell Briggs, knocked twice and walked in at 7:30 sharp. Russell was a big straight-talking man from Dayton who'd been with me for 19 years. He knew every inch of this facility. He also knew without being told when something was in motion. He took one look at my face and sat down. You want coffee first, or should I just brace myself? Pull the Wilson account, I said. Russell's eyebrows went up exactly a 1/4 inch. Weston Flow Enterprises. That's the one. He already had his tablet out. They're mid-contract, Cole. 18 months left on the supply agreement. Components division, they move about $2.3 million through us annually. $2.3 million. Benjamin Wilson sat across dinner tables telling people about his thriving manufacturing supply business, without ever mentioning that the engine underneath it, the contract that made his quarterly numbers sing, ran directly through my facility. The man called my bloodline unworthy while cashing checks signed by my company. I almost smiled. Almost. I'm not canceling the contract, I said. Russell paused. Okay, I'm restructuring it. I leaned back in my chair. Pull every clause related to vendor performance reviews. I want a formal assessment letter drafted. Standard language, nothing aggressive. Notifying Weston Flow that Nova Group is conducting a comprehensive vendor evaluation effective immediately. All payments pause, pending review. Standard procedure. It's in the contract. Page 11, Section 4, Paragraph C. I knew because I wrote it. They've got 30 days to respond to the evaluation before we determine contract continuation. He nodded slowly, the way a man does when he understands that what sounds routine is anything but. And who's heading the evaluation? I picked up the framed photo of Nolan, set it back down facing me. The new director of vendor relations. Russell blinked. We don't have a director of vendor re. We do as of this morning. He answered on the second ring, voice groggy. He'd slept in his old bedroom for the first time in 11 years. Him and Eli both. Eli curled up like a puppy in the middle of the twin bed, while Nolan folded himself around the edges. Dad, it's early. It's almost 8:30. I didn't sleep until 4. Fair enough. How's Eli? A pause. I heard him shift, probably checking on the boy. Still out. Sleeping like nothing happened. His voice softened. Kids, man. That's because he knows he's safe. I let that land. You both are. You understand me. Dad. Nolan. I said his name the way I used to when he was 16 and getting in his own way. I need you to listen to me very carefully right now, okay? Not as my son. As a grown man who's about to step into something real. Silence on the line. I need you at Nova Group by 10 o'clock. Business casual. We're going to walk the floor together. I'm going to introduce you to the team. And then we're going to sit down and I'm going to explain to you what I've been building and exactly what your role in it looks like going forward. More silence. Then, Dad, what is Nova Group? Oh, son. It's ours. Has been for 32 years. I picked up my coffee. 10 o'clock. Don't be late. I hung up before he could ask another question. He needed to see it to believe it. Some things you can't explain over the phone. He walked through the front entrance at 9:58. I was standing on the production floor when he came in. Watched him through the glass before he saw me. Watched him stop just inside the lobby, look up at the facility ceiling, 40 feet high. Cranes and conveyor lines and precision equipment running in organized rows. 200 employees moving with the kind of synchronized purpose that only comes from years of culture building. His mouth was open slightly. Good. That's the right reaction. Russell met him at the door and walked him to me. When Nolan reached me, he looked like a man trying to solve a math problem in his head that kept coming out too big. Dad. He looked around. Then back at me. This whole time? This whole time. You drove a 2009 Camry. Still do. Mom knew. I paused. She knew enough. She knew the important parts. She also knew why we kept it quiet. Money changes people, Nolan. The wrong people find out what you have, and suddenly everybody's got a handout and a reason and a story. I started walking, and he fell into step beside me. I wanted you to stand on your own first. Build your own confidence. Know that whatever you became it, on your own merit. He was quiet for a long time as we walked the floor. Workers nodded at me. A few introduced themselves to Nolan. A woman named Carol from the Components Division shook his hand and said, "You look just like your daddy." We ended up in my office. I closed the door, poured us both coffee and spread 3 folders across the desk. Financials, org structure, and the Weston Flow vendor file. Nolan picked up the last one. I watched his face as he read it. Watched the moment he registered the company name. Watched his jaw tighten. Weston Flow Enterprises, he said quietly. That's Benjamin's company. He's a vendor here. Has been for 9 years. Nolan set the folder down. Looked at me. You're telling me that while Benjamin Wilson was sitting at his dinner table calling us unworthy, he was making money through your company? The room was very quiet. Then Nolan said with a calm that honestly impressed me, "What's in the folder?" A vendor performance evaluation notice. Payments paused pending review. I slid it toward him. Standard procedure. And who's conducting the review? I slid the second document across. A formal offer letter. Director of Vendor Relations, Nova Group. Compensation package that would have made his old salary look like a rounding error. His hands were very still on the desk. Dad. I've never done anything like this before. You fixed Benjamin Wilson's back porch with your own hands, I said. You coached his nephew's Little League team. You showed up to every dinner and every holiday and every family obligation with your whole chest. I leaned forward. You know how to show up, Nolan. That's 70% of leadership right there. The rest I'll teach you. He stared at the offer letter for a long moment. Come on, son. Pick it up. He picked it up. When Benjamin gets that evaluation notice, he said slowly, he's going to know something's wrong. He's going to make some calls, I agreed. He's going to ask around, and eventually, I sat back, he's going to figure out whose building he's been in for 9 years. Nolan looked at me. And then what? Oh, that's the best part. Then, I said, he's going to have to call you. The silence that followed was the most satisfied silence I'd felt in 32 years of building something in the quiet. Nolan set the offer letter down, picked up a pen from my desk, signed it. Benjamin Wilson's evaluation notice went out at 4:47 p.m. that Wednesday. By Thursday morning, I had 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. I recognized it. I let it go to voicemail every time. He wasn't ready to talk to me yet. He needed to talk to Nolan first, and Nolan, for the first time in 2 days, was sleeping just fine. Nolan was standing when Benjamin walked in, not sitting behind the desk trying to look powerful. Standing, relaxed, jacket on, hands easy at his sides. The office was clean and quiet, afternoon light cutting through the Cincinnati gray outside the windows, the production floor humming its steady rhythm below like a heartbeat that had never once skipped. He looked, if I'm being completely honest, like a man who had been there his entire life. Benjamin stopped in the doorway. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. I counted from the hallway where I stood just out of view, close enough to hear everything, far enough to let my son have his room. Nolan. Benjamin's voice was careful, measured. The voice of a man who'd walked into a room expecting one thing and was already quietly recalibrating. Benjamin. Nolan gestured to the chair across the desk. Thanks for coming in. Have a seat. In a room that Benjamin Wilson had been funding for 9 years without ever knowing whose name was on the deed. I heard the chair move. Heard the stillness that followed, the particular stillness of 2 men who have shared family dinners and holiday tables and backyard conversations, now sitting across from each other in a completely different kind of room. I think there's been some misunderstanding, Benjamin started. Smooth, practiced, the tone of a man accustomed to reframing situations in his favor. About the evaluation notice. We've been a loyal vendor to this company for nearly a decade, and I think if we just talk through the numbers, the relationship has always been mutually benefit. There's no misunderstanding, Nolan said. Not loud, not sharp, just final. Nova Group conducts regular vendor evaluations. It's standard procedure. It's in your contract. The briefest pause. Page 11, Section 4, Paragraph C. Silence settled over the room like fresh concrete. Nolan. Benjamin's voice dropped a register, softer now. The involuntary softness of a man feeling the floor shift beneath him. Look, I understand things between our families are complicated right now. I understand there are emotions involved, and I'm not dismissing that. But business is business, and I don't think we need to let personal matters cloud what has been a very productive professional. You're right, Nolan said. Business is business. Benjamin paused. Hadn't expected agreement, which is why I want to be completely professional about what happens next. I heard movement, the quiet slide of a folder across a desk surface. There it is. I've had our team prepare a revised vendor agreement, Nolan continued. New contract, restructured terms, fair pricing, realistic delivery benchmarks, standard performance clauses. Nothing punitive, nothing personal. Heavier. Benjamin was reading. I could picture it. The man in the charcoal suit, silver hair, 9 years of comfortable assumptions, dissolving line by line as he worked through a document prepared by the son he'd thrown out of his daughter's life 4 days ago. 4 days. Benjamin Wilson had turned our world upside down on a Monday night, and by Friday afternoon his entire business lifeline was sitting in Nolan Edwards' hands in a building Cole Edwards owned. God has a sense of humor. He just doesn't always show his hand early. This is... Benjamin started. Stopped. These terms are reasonable. I know they are, Nolan said simply. I wrote them to be. More silence. Nolan. Benjamin's voice had changed again, something underneath it now that hadn't been there when he walked in. Something older. Quieter. Like a man who'd been carrying something heavy for a long time and could feel his grip finally going. What I said. About your family. About your... He stopped on the word. Couldn't quite get it out the second time. I was wrong. I've been wrong about a lot of things for a long time, and I told myself it was principle. No, it's okay. I forgive you. I appreciate that. The honest response of a man who's been wounded and isn't pretending otherwise. The evaluation will run its course, Nolan continued. Whatever happens professionally, happens professionally. But Eli needs his grandfather, his mother's father. Whatever that relationship looks like going forward, that's between you and God and your daughter. My jaw tightened in the hallway. Not from anger, from recognition. Because that's the most honest thing Benjamin Wilson had ever said in my presence, and he didn't even know I was there to hear it. Nolan let the words sit, didn't rush to fill the space, didn't offer cheap comfort or easy absolution, He let the man breathe inside his own truth for a moment, which, if you ask me, was more grace than Benjamin Wilson had earned, and more character than most men his son's age could have managed. I appreciate that, Nolan said finally. Steady, warm but not weak. Genuinely. Then, but I need you to understand something, Benjamin. His voice was quiet now, the kind of quiet that commands a room better than volume ever could. Not as a vendor, not as your former son-in-law, as a man. I stopped breathing. My father built something extraordinary. 32 years. Quietly, without asking anyone's permission or approval or validation. Another beat. He built it for our family, for our name, for Eli. I could hear the steadiness in every syllable. No tremor, no performance, just truth. You looked at us and saw a bloodline that wasn't worthy. You made a phone call that cost me my job. You pressured my wife into walking away from her marriage. The room was absolutely still, and somehow, Nolan's voice stayed level even as the weight of those words filled every corner of that office. You ended up sitting across from me, in our building, reviewing a contract that determines whether your company survives next quarter. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Nolan slid something else across the desk. A pen. My father taught me that real power doesn't humiliate. I closed my eyes in the hallway. It just makes things very, very clear. The silence that followed was the longest 8 seconds of my life. Then, the quiet, unmistakable scratch of a pen moving across paper. Benjamin Wilson signed the contract. Nolan signed it after him. Calm. Deliberate. The way a man signs something he's already decided. Nobody said another word about bloodlines. Nobody made a speech. Nobody twisted the knife or raised a voice or did anything that needed to be done because nothing needed to be done anymore. Everyone in that room knew who won. Nobody said it out loud. They didn't have to. I walked downstairs. Not into the meeting. I never went into the meeting. I walked out to the parking lot, stood next to my 2009 Camry and looked up at the gray Cincinnati sky for a long, quiet moment. 32 years. Not one day of it was about revenge. Not really. It was about legacy, about building something so solid, so deep-rooted, that when the storm finally came from my family, it would have somewhere real to stand. I thought about my father pressing $8,000 into my hands with everything he had in his eyes. I thought about Nolan at 9 years old, fishing at the river, grinning like he'd conquered the world. I thought about Eli in that Reds cap, serious as a judge, telling me his juice box was graped like it was the most important information I'd ever need. Bloodline. Benjamin Wilson had called our bloodline unworthy. This was our bloodline. A grandfather who built in silence, a father who showed up without flinching, a grandson who didn't know yet what was being preserved for him, but would spend the rest of his life inside the proof of it. There is no amount of money, no corporate contract, no charcoal suit that measures that. I got in my car, turned on Johnny Cash, and drove home, in my modest car, from my company, through my city, the same way I'd driven home for 32 years. Quietly. Completely. Undefeated. If you enjoyed this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And share this with someone. And as always, thank you for being a part of this community. I will see you on the next one.